Hey everybody, today I wanted to cover mat antennas. That's a common question I get. So there's really two different options. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each. Why there's two options right now is a few years ago, Race Result was granted the patent for foldable mat antennas, so it covers all foldable mat antennas. I read through the patent, spent weeks trying to figure it out. In the end, whenever I realized it seems pretty tight, talked to a couple attorneys, and we agreed that they seem to have legitimate patent for these things. So kudos to them for that. We all know they make great products, so happy for them to get that patent. But I want to talk about the two differences. So Race Result told me that Black Box Timing Mat is, they either licensed their patent, or I think there's some long history between their companies. They're allowing Black Box to also sell their mat. So that's the two options available. And if you want to know more about the patent and kind of my thoughts on it, and there's a lot of common questions to get with that, like, well, is it illegal to use a different company or different product? I cover all that in the patent thread. So if you go to my users forum, which you can access from the help menu of the software, or just go to Google and search for Google Groups AZ Race Timing to find it there. And then there's a search bar at the top of the forum. So just search for like Race Result patent, you'll find it. But I cover all that there. But it really boils down to just these two options. And so with these two options, let's talk about the pros and cons of each. I do want to say in the front end that this is the half mats. And so they, by default, come with an 8-segment mat. Now, for me and my users, which, we're not trying to time like the London Marathon. We're not trying to time, the 10,000 plus participant races. Most of my users are small to medium-sized races that we time on average. I think, at least for, my crews and I, we do about 100 races a year in our biggest race. Besides like cross country, where you have multiple races. So you may have like 6 400-person races, right? I mean, but most of our races are going to be 2,000 people or less. The system's not limited anyway when it comes to that, but it's one of those things that I didn't design this for those huge mega races. If you are going to time those, I kind of tell people, check out Race Result. They make great products. Have a lot of respect, especially after this patent discussion with them. I gained a lot of respect from them, and I hope they did for me as well. But all right, that's a side note. So talk about the differences. So obviously the color. If you have a red arch, or if you have a let's say you're buying this for a school and your school colors have red or black in them or something like that, you may prefer the Race Result mat. Obviously the other one's blue, so there you go with that. The other big difference is the cost. I will say the Race Result mat, unless they're running a sale, the Race Result mat's typically a little bit more expensive. So I know that's a big factor for people. They want to know about that. I'm not going to give prices here because they could change, but it's typically a little bit more expensive. And I say a little bit, I'm just going to ballpark it like $200 to $400 depending on your configuration, because all of this can be configured custom to what you need. Now, if you try to get something ridiculous like 100-foot long antenna cables, so Race Result or whoever is going to say, it's not a good idea. A lot of power loss through those cables. But for the most part, what you see is their default offering here, except for that empty segment added on the end of the blue mat there. In fact, I'll fold that up so you see what it looks like if you get a half mat. Like I said before, since most of my users are going to be doing small to medium-sized races, a finish line width of like 8 to 12 feet or 8 to 10 feet is plenty wide. And so even when you're doing a chip start, I don't mind to funnel people through, this right here with the blue mat, and I'll usually make it slightly wider because, it picks up outside of the range here. But and I'll have antennas on both sides if it's a large chip start. In fact, I'll hook up all 8 ports and have the mat with antennas on both sides, maybe 6 inches behind, just because it's a wide read zone coming out of the antennas. And then I'll stagger my other 2 antennas kind of, throughout the start a little further back, just to have as long of a chance to see people as possible when they run through. But this width here is not terribly uncomfortable, not unreasonable. I don't know, I hope the phone is showing it okay, but it's a roughly 8.5, 9 foot wide starting line area. And that's been just fine for me. Again, worst case, put the antenna in the middle and then put your panel antennas a little further out with a black mat covering the cables or something, if you need wider than that. But if you do need wider, of course, there is an option to add. You can tell us or Race Results, or Black Box, you need 5 or 6 or all 8 antenna segments. That's always an option. All right, pros with each one. The Race Result mat, I feel like, number one, they're a trusted company. I mean, they're going to make good stuff. They got amazing engineering. And so that's plenty of my customers for many years have been buying Race Result mats. So that's always an option. You can it just feels higher quality. I mean, I don't know if it's just the extra slip protection, the way it's designed, kind of the little notches built into it there. It just feels like a higher quality mat. The Black Box doesn't feel cheap. It just, the two together, when you feel them, it's like, oh, that feels a little more solid. Now, I haven't noticed any difference in performance. Definitely, if you were to put these things on some kind of machines with extra sensitive testing, maybe it could tell a difference. But if you're reliably getting 100% read rates, you're happy either way. So I will say that the majority of the reads when I time a race, because in the timing software it shows the number of reads per antenna, and it shows which antenna picked up the key read that triggered that finisher, and it's almost like a 10-to-1 ratio on the panel antennas picking up way more than the mat. Handful of reasons. Number one, the panels they obviously have a much wider read zone, so it's going to pick them up more as they come through. And with the mat, you just got one chance to pick them up when they run through. There's lots of other reasons why, but that's the main reason for me is I like to use the panel antennas with the mat. Now, if you're using just shoe tags only, then I would say the mat's probably just fine. But man, that panel antenna, at least one, maybe two or more, provides a lot of peace of mind and very reliable read rates there. So. Okay, so back to the pros and cons. So the black box timing mat, it does come naturally. It's longer if you get the half mat. Obviously, people go for the half mat because that's pretty much what they need for the finish line, and it's half the cost as the full size mat. The half mat's also going to take up just 4 antenna ports versus 8. So here is the 4 antenna cables coming out of the race result mat, and here's the 4 coming out of the black box mat. I did put a tape measure out here, so if you're curious, it's 112 inches, and then here this is 42 inches, and so that's I would say that if these are on some kind of machine testing the performance coming out, probably the shorter cables are going to not have as much power loss. But I don't have any troubles with that extra length of the cable there, and for me personally, I do like to have that extra length so that, let's say you don't have a timing box like this, you can set your reader inside the finish line tent where your timing table is, and that way you can protect it from the rain if it's not in some kind of rainproof box. And otherwise, with the race result mat, your reader's right there, no matter what. And so now you can order longer cables, but there's more expense with that. I think with the race result mat too, they do come with a different type of connector by default. And if you want the reverse polarity TNC connectors, which are able, allow you to go straight into the reader, then that's an extra cost. I don't remember how much extra, but it is an extra cost there. Whereas the black box timing mat, you can order whichever cable type you need, and there's no extra cost. I think in fact, I know they just throw an adapter on, which at first I didn't think was as good because I thought, okay, well, it's another point of failure. I've always heard that the more adapters you go through, there's more, power loss through each one, or could be. And so I thought that was a benefit with the race result, and it probably still is in those regards, but just in the past few weeks, let me open this up and I'll show you, I realized something that makes my setup a lot faster and easier is, and I'm sure you can get the adapters to do this with the race result mat, but it's just nice that it comes by default with no extra cost with the black box, is I'll leave I didn't realize I could unscrew these adapters from the cables that come with the mat, and I put them on really tight. That's like really snug here. Now don't over tighten, of course, but tight enough where it doesn't come off easy. And then whenever I feed my cables through, I'll just do it here, well, then it's a quick half turn. So now it actually snaps in a little bit, and it's a half turn and it's on. And so plus these being a little bit skinnier, it provides a little more space to get your fingers in there. Whereas if you get the reverse polarity TNC connectors like you do on the a normal cable antenna or the race result mat, then you got to get your fingers down there, and it gets pretty tight, and you got to do about 10 to 15 turns before it's snug, and you got to worry about cross-threading and all kinds of things. Whereas this is just a quick half twist on, half twist off. So that's going to make our setup time a little bit faster, and of course on race morning when it's dark and it's cold and you're in a hurry, that makes a difference. So that's one benefit is the quick connectors, the no extra cost on that, longer cables, longer mat. The race result mat, I feel like, again, you can add empty segments, but the empty segment's going to be more expensive with race result than it is with black box. And the default half mat, which by the way they don't offer on their website, that's just something they're doing for us. That's much appreciated, because again, most of my users don't need to spend twice as much for twice the length when most of their races are going to be small. So if you're doing a 100, 200 person race, this width is just fine. But you start getting into chip starts, or you start getting into cross-country races where they have a defined finish line area that maybe they've already got the ribbons up for you, and that this may you may have 2 or 3 or 4 feet of space that really needs to be covered that is not. Even if you put it dead center, there's still a lot of empty space. So I'm finding that this mat, even though it's just like 6 inches or 10 inches shorter, every inch when it comes to just this short of a mat matters. And so that's one benefit with the black box timing mat, is it does come with by default with 4 segments that are longer. And if you needed to add an extra segment, you can, and it's a cheaper price. I added this extra segment because if I wanted to have, let's say it's a pretty small race, and I wanted to have this antenna where it's reading sideways, then this extra segment, I can have it propped up like that, and now it's providing a different read angle. And so it's reading this way, I've got my antenna reading that way, and of course I'm reading from below. I hardly ever do that anymore, but that is an option. So not only does it make the mat longer, but it also gives me a quick way I can prop that up to get an extra angle if I wanted to. So, okay, I think I've covered the main differences. I tried to put these mats on the same kind of crack here so you can see they are at the exact same starting location, and that's the difference in the length. I think that covers the majority of it. I will add some notes in here at the bottom of the video if I forgot something else. But yeah, that's the difference between the two mats. Whenever I buy them for my crews, again, I hate to say it because I like Race Result. Interacted with a couple of the guys there with this whole patent thing. Really respect them now. Not that I didn't before, but even more so now. But for me and my crews, because of the lower costs, because of the extra length, and because of the extra cable length and the quick connectors, me and my crews, we go with the black box timing mat, but you'll be happy with either one. Just wanted to point out the differences of the two, and if you have any questions about them, let me know. So as I was quickly tearing this down, this is my lunch break, so that's when I try to quickly do any race timing work, separate from the office job here. But when I was quickly tearing this down, I realized another small difference. I don't want to say better or worse or whatever, just difference. So with the Race Result mat, I find myself constantly having to bend and tuck in the corners on either parts of it. And sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating. And it looks like if something were to get hung, this thing, and I'm not going to pull all the way off. I don't think there may not be any problems legally with showing you what's under there. But anyways, the pro and con with this, of course, is if you do need to fix something or change cables or do whatever, then you can easily pull this off. And so that's a good thing, but at the same time, it can be also a little bit of a headache because, a lot of times as you're just moving the mat around naturally, that pops up, and you don't want that to be a tripping hazard or something that's maybe less water in there, who knows what. And whereas this one's screwed down, which of course makes it where if you do need to replace something, maybe not as easy. So that's just a difference I wanted to point out before I pack this stuff away. So.